So obviously, the Israeli Defense Force did kill some of its own people, the Israelis, on October the 7th. So it's just logical. The greatest or the best trained military, supposedly, and the best surveillance services and intelligence services, they didn't see this coming, so they were caught off guard. They were told, or there would have been this whole, all this hysteria going on about thousands of missiles being lobbed at Israel. So from their point of view at the time, even the top generals and top operators would have thought from the reports coming in that there's thousands of missiles hitting the whole of Israel. That's what it made it sound like. But it wasn't. It was a few missiles hitting, maybe 20 or 30 on that day. I'm not going to. I don't believe the thousands of missiles story. Utter nonsense. No proof of that. But maybe 20, 30, 40 at the most. Some of them homemade and delivered by paragliders. But so the military, Israeli military, jumps up after eating donuts, having a laugh, doing selfies and TikTok videos. Suddenly gets told this is happening, mass invasion going. They jump up, they jump into the field, and obviously the drone operators, the missile operators, the tank operators, the soldiers are in a panic. They're going to be in a panic, and they don't know. It's not well organized. They don't know exactly where it's coming from. But seems to be coming from all directions with paragliders and such like. Hamas driving in cars and things like that. So they jump up with their fighter jets and drones and missiles, and they strike anything that moves. Obviously, in a panic. There's no way that was some perfectly executed military operation. So they're in a panic. That goes without saying, from top to bottom, from the generals to the soldiers, and they're just they shoot anything they think is Hamas. And obviously, this festival, they don't have notes at the military saying there's a festival going on right now. If there's an attack, don't forget. No, they wouldn't even know. They wouldn't even know that there's a festival going on. They see these cars driving around in a panic where they might think some of them at least are Hamas. They see people running around from the eyes in the sky, all that stuff. And it ends up in this massive attack on their own country, really, with missiles and strikes from drones. Those I forget the names of those missiles, tanks, and military personnel, soldiers on the ground with high tech. They have the best equipment in the world. They don't have the best trained military at all. That's made up. There is no best trained military. There's just military's obsolete stupidity talking about that kind of thing. However, they do have the best equipment, and they can't pinpoint things because they don't have the best surveillance that everyone says they have. They never have had. They've had a matter of dumb luck in most cases and gotten by and maybe figured some stuff out. And so, just like any intelligence agency, they're not very clever. They're not smart. They might be clever enough, but they're still not clever enough to get around what's going on in the world and figure it out from a distance and things like that. So they can't figure out who's Hamas and who's not. They just shoot at anything. And there are apparently even orders to shoot at civilian targets, houses, such like, even though the personnel were cautioning that it might be civilian. So, but even if you put that aside, there's no way under the sun. Occam's razor proves, just reason, rationale, and logic, that the greatest, a great trained military in a panic, or rather well-trained military, but in a panic with massive, the best equipment in the world, is going to just be shooting at whatever moves. And they don't know about some festival. It's just a bunch of cars driving around, and the festival goers are driving around in a panic. And a lot of the atrocities that were told at the beginning of this are all lies. 40 heads, chopped off babies, things like that. It's just all lies. So, the festival goers were caught in the crossfire with the Israeli military going full-on panic mode. They are bound to have killed their own people. There were 1,200 reported deaths on that day and maybe beyond. But it turns out there was only 900. The Israelis have put that figure down to 900. And a lot of those would have been killed by a massive response by Israel in a panic. That's just obvious. If you can't think that that's what happened, it's because you're brainwashed. You have PTSD, and you have, literally, you're in a state of hypnotism through the brainwashing, through the fear-mongering, been going on for years, by the way, and now certain brains, or many brains, are just able to be flipped in if it's on the right topic that's their thing. They might not totally buy into something like Ukraine, but now a lot of them have gone full mad, hysterical blind. They're blind. Many people are blind on many topics, many major events, including this, including Russiagate, including COVID. And I'm a left-winger before everyone calls me a Trumpist. But I call myself a left-wing libertarian these days. So, and I live in America. So we didn't get locked down much, really, of anything. It's very short where I live. So, but all that PTSD builds up and hysteria. And now, for this particular topic, a lot of people have become very one-sided, one side or the other. Completely wrong, both sides. Pro-Palestinian, pro-Israel. Both wrong. Because it's not Israel against Palestine. It's those are pawns in a giant geopolitical, military, industrial, corporate, news media complex, right? And that's mostly the American complex, where the military, and that complex, America, borrows trillions of dollars from the future, from the sky and from the future, and just falls out the sky apparently, to have the largest military in the world. And so Israel is a pawn in all that, and they don't even know it, I don't think. They do it because Biden has literally said it out loud many times, that Israel is there for America's purposes. Words to that effect. And he said it decades ago, and he's been saying it for decades. So many other people have too, that we have to protect Israel to protect American interests, right? So it's a pawn in a giant game. So it's not Israel's fault, it's not Palestine's fault. So these two-sided maniac sides, biting at each other like rabid dogs, are wrong. But especially the Israeli side are wrong because they believed all the propaganda. 40 heads chopped off of babies, the festival being a complete massacre, which a lot of that was, it was all crossfire. And maybe Gazans killed festival goers thinking they were belligerents. Maybe there were a couple of bad apples. There's always some bad apples in every army. Same for Israel. And so you got a mass response that they killed their own people. This is a logical fact. There's no way out of that. There's no way to say that Israel did not kill a lot of its own people. And those missiles they were using are enough to burn up, yes, char babies and bodies to cinder. Yeah, that's definitely the kind of weapon they have, the high-tech stuff. So, possible some Hamas missiles did hit civilians and burn them to cinder. But this idea of them putting babies in ovens and all that, it's just made up nonsense. And Israel did a massive attack of its own, and accidentally, but in their mass rage or fear and panic, they definitely would have killed many of that 900. Maybe almost half. So you decide if that's the right response, and then you have to go through the whole of history to see what response is right, and you end up with these two sides barking at each other. But that's not it. It's not them. It's not Israel. It's not Palestine. It's not even Saudi Arabia, who also is controlled by this massive military need for the biggest oil fossil fuel burner in the world, which is the US military's biggest single entity. And so that's what it was all about. Technically, I mean, yeah, that's what it's about. It's not Israel. It's not Gaza. It's not Hamas. And so Israel, as a pawn in a game, giant global geopolitical game, killed many of its own people on October the 7th, and Hamas killed many people too. And many of the atrocities were made up. So take those obvious facts and learn them. Think about them, and think about every other war you've heard of in the last 20, 30 years. Revise what you thought about that. 40 babies thrown out of incubators in 1990 in Kuwait. A lie. Everyone knows that was made up now, right? Many other lies. WMDs in Iraq, Russians raping women and children in Ukraine. Made up lies. You're being lied to all the time. Follow my channel to get around them, because I'm the only one on the planet that actually sees through all this stuff. And you can ask me about Ukraine, because I'm the only one that I know of that actually saw that, apart from Putin himself and some Russians, right? Saw what was actually going on there. And it wasn't what you were told. So follow my stuff, follow my pages, Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, or just enjoy being lied to. A sort of a masochism from everybody, by the way, because you're all being wrong. Every single person I know who's out there talking about anything has been totally wrong on a major, major topic, which I literally have not been. I've not been wrong on for decades on these major events. I saw through it immediately, and I saw through this immediately, that there's going to be a lot of that was made up, those atrocities about Hamas. And Hamas does not want to kill off Jews or Judaism. It's literally stated that clearly in its charter, most recent charters, and they're not against Jews or Judaism. They're only against the system that exists in Israel, which they call Zionism, which is a sort of militant political system. It's nothing to do with Judaism. And so if you believe that that's what Hamas and Arabs are against Jews and want to kill off Jews and Judah, you've been brainwashed. Wake up. Think. Think about the fact that WMDs in Iraq were wrong, was a lie. Think about the fact that 40 babies had their heads chopped off in Israel this last month was a lie. Then you have to start thinking, well, what else? Maybe a lot of that other stuff was lies, right? So what if it was? If some of it was, you have to question all of it. So the festival was definitely a crossfire from Israelis and Hamas. And Israelis have the biggest firepower, so they killed a lot of their own people, and hardly any Hamas people. Might have killed a few Hamas, but just as many Israelis. So that's how it unfolded. And if you believe all the propaganda, you believe that propaganda, all the propaganda. You know, Russians blew up their own pipeline, because that was the story at first. They went around the world. It's utter nonsense, laughable. And so if you believed any of that, and I could point out many aspects of propaganda over the years, and if you believed it, you have to question what you're believing now. That's the point. Wake up. You're being lied to all the time as part of a system. It's not necessarily individuals, although many individuals do embolden that whole system, which is the Western or American media complex. News, media is very embroiled in there. That's why I said it first there, but political, military, industrial complex, right? So it's money, and it's greed, and it's sensationalism, and you're being brainwashed by it all, pounded down into a brain that cannot actually function anymore. Follow my channels to get around that. I might not be a perfect guy, far from it, and I've got many, I'm not 100%, you know, I don't fit into society. I don't want to, you know, I've got the long hair and all that. Yeah, I don't want to fit into society because society is mad. You're living in a mental asylum. So, you know, being lied to all the time. Stop letting yourself be lied to and be over emotional. As soon as a dead baby's picture, especially, I'm sorry to say it, women, but men too, but women who have young kids and young children are going to get, especially a baby, because you've just had the baby, it's the most beautiful thing in your life right now. You see that, you're instantly brainwashed. That's why they do it, so that men and women, young men and women who have babies and children are instantly horrified. The brain is then easy to throw in other lies and misinformation. It's going on all the time. You have to break out of it, and you don't have a chance of doing that. None of you. All these people I watch on social media, these huge influencers when it comes to news and things like that, news and politics, anything like that, they're clueless on certain topics. There's one or two that I think have sort of gotten a lot of topics more or less right, but still completely wrong, very much wrong. So their interpretation of what's going on, even though they might have a pretty good interpretation historically, they might bring in historical facts, things like that, they still can't really see what's going on because they got one major aspect of it wrong from the get-go. So I guess I have a skeptical view of things, so I don't. I see through the BS. Follow my channel. But yeah, you've been brainwashed about what happened on October the 7th. Hamas is not against Jews or Judaism. You're being lied to about that. And it's a long history going on there that you can't just blame on October the 7th. 240 people were killed in 2023 this year before October the 7th by Israelis in Gaza. Many children. So of course you're going to fight back if you can. It was a pathetic fight or invasion by Gaza. Pathetic. Like they're just desperate. And there were not 2,000 missiles. There was maybe 10 or 20. So maybe 50 at the most. So you're being lied to. Wake up. And yes, there's no question that Israel killed many of its own country's people on October the 7th. You have to be a complete delusional fool, sheep and half-wit of epic proportions to not realise that and not see that. It's obvious. It's obvious. No way that they were able to pinpoint who was Hamas and who wasn't at all. So they just shot whatever they thought was Hamas. Half of them will have been their own citizens, and they would have fired missiles that would have charred people's bodies to a cinder, unrecognisable. That's how it works. That's what it does. All right, that's enough. Okay, I've said my piece on October the 7th. I'm not going to mention that much again. But you're a fool if you think that Israel didn't kill many of its own citizens that day. Okay, and that's important because it fits into all the other propaganda that you've been fed with. Break out of it. Follow my channel. It's your only chance, and I'm not joking. Cheers.